everybody. Pen here with Yogacises. I have Nicolle Leanne here. Really excited to have her on today. Thank you for being on. She sent me a description of her journey and her story of what she's doing right now. There are a few things I'd love for her to cover. She mentioned that she does shamanic healing, and there's astrology involved, and there's some other things that I haven't even heard of before. So it's all related to holistic lifestyle, holistic energy related topics. So I'll let her take over and share her journey and why she chose the different areas that she's working on and how they are related.
Thank you for the introduction. So I guess to start my journey, I think for me, started at the age of 12 for the study of astrology. I've been studying astrology since I was 12. A large part of that had to deal with trying to figure out who I am and why I felt so different from everybody else, and understanding myself more. And then that curiosity led in my journey to wanting to know more about everybody else and what makes them so different, or why do we get along with certain individuals versus others, and in our many individual complexities. And I found astrology to be very insightful the deeper I went with it. And so that was really fascinating journey for me, realizing that everybody's unique birth chart, which is based on the exact minute of your birth, as well as your geographical location, besides birth date, obviously, to kind of synchronize that exact moment in time to understand what all the planets were doing at that very moment. That kind of gives the blueprint to your personality and the lens you see through in life, outside of obviously the external experience of your upbringing and how that shapes you individually, right? So that was really fascinating for me, and is continued to be very fascinating for me. And it gives me a great tool in understanding people and their unique lens as to how they might be therefore creating their reality, if you factor in the universal laws like the law of attraction. And that obviously for me, that knowingness came later in understanding what the laws of the universe are doing. So I was basically breaking down what all the planets' influences were, not only in your personality, but then how those energies that continue to shift daily interact with your own individual chart, so how those energies might affect you or myself, and how to therefore manipulate energy to make it work for you, or know when there's tough energies that are showing up and how to kind of anticipate them rather than being sideswiped, if you will, by being taken off guard and then feeling like victim to circumstance because you might not understand these external energies, which most people don't have a deeper understanding of. So that for me started at the age of 12. Another thing that was pretty profound that I was introduced to, and this was when I was 13 years old, was a modality called the glass. And this was something that I was introduced to by my mother and my grandmother as a tool of communication, like a portal on communicating to the spirit realm. And so if you think about that being an early introduction in a childhood, you get to really broaden your perspectives as to what you believe is possible in the non-physical sense, right? When you're, for me at that age, communicating with my great-grandmother who had passed away, and or as I utilized it as a tool growing up to communicate with guides or other people's loved ones and what have you. So that was really cool, and it's kind of similar concept to the Ouija, although there's a lot of misconceptions and people treating it like a game and not honoring its sanctity, and because it is a portal to the spirit realm, and in this case, this is more of like a homemade version called the glass, and so you need to treat it with sanctity. in what you invite in and whom you are communicating with, and protecting your circle so that you're just not inviting in any energies to communicate with you. Because, there is lower vibratory, energies and entities and beings that can affect people, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So that was something that was really cool for me, to like broaden my horizons. Let's see. All through my teenage years, I dabbled. I was always curious about this spiritual realm, the non-physical. So any forms of divination, tarot, runes, playing with magic, all of it piqued my curiosity. And I would say what then unfolded for me was being introduced to the law of attraction, and subsequently over the years, some of the other laws, universal laws that governs our universe. But the law of attraction, I'm not sure if you're familiar with. I'm assuming you are. Okay. So I was introduced to that when I was 19 through what most people get introduced to it through is the popular documentary, The Secret. And then I delved further. I wanted to know everything about it, how I could master my reality in co-creating and manifesting what I wanted more of. I really loved that concept of not just feeling, again, victim to circumstances, and realizing I am a co-creator. And so that was really powerful for me in evolving. However, in playing with it, obviously starting out more egoically, things you want, whether it's money, your cars, or landing your relationship, things like that, I realized I manifested all of it. So that was a very empowering thing for me to realize and take accountability for, and realizing I'm creating all of it. And so my next path, I guess it kind of unfolded, was learning to master my mind. Because if my mind is partly projecting thoughts or beliefs, and my emotions, then being riled up around whatever it is I'm potentially creating, I don't know. It just mastering your mind was my next thing of interest, and that kind of got more empowered when I was introduced to remote viewing and remote influencing, which was a course that was gifted to me by somebody who used to be in I don't think it was the army, but he was one of the people that were in that was doing remote viewing for the government and things like that. And so he gifted me this course, which was wonderful to fall in my lap, because it really helped me to empower and entrain my mind to have access to I guess profound experiences, not only with empowering my mind to create reality, but also experiencing astral projection in traveling kind of dimensionally. And so that was really profound for me as well, in how I was evolving. And then along the way, I got certified for Reiki, which I'm sure you're already familiar with, which is the energy healing modality. And the only reason I did that was because I wanted to help my grandmother, who was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And I'm originally from South Africa, so I was supposed to travel back to go visit her, but my flights were a few weeks out before I could go back. And so I got certified in the meantime, thinking, what could I do to help her? And unfortunately, I didn't get to use it because she passed away the day before my flight. Yeah, so that was kind of sad. But I used it on some friends and family. But again, I didn't think anything of it. It was just another tool in my tool belt that I kind of put on the shelf. And I've always been kind of learning holistically and about science and quantum physics along the way. And I remember I reached a crossroads. So all of this stuff was always for my own growth, keep in mind. It was never what I thought I was going to be offering to other people. But I would say when I was about, I think 24 or 25, I reached this crossroads in my life where the path that I was egoically going on, what my ego thought it wanted to feel fulfilled and happy, I ended up finding out it wasn't the key to my happiness. And so I kind of like decided to give up my like old job system and really try to like surrender and ask the universe for some guidance. Like I felt really lost and really stuck because I was so used to being able to create what I wanted, but I reached this point where all the things I created was a temporary feel good, and it wasn't a feel good on a soul level. And a lot of it felt really empty to me. And so it was kind of like, okay, if none of this stuff is buying my happiness, if money isn't buying my happiness, then like what's the point in what I'm doing? And so I kind of surrendered and asked the universe for a sign and some guidance. And then what got brought into my awareness was quantum biofeedback, which my sister introduced me to because it's something that she explored when she was, she had I guess, an alternative experience with experiencing kind of like a demonic entity. And after this experience never felt the same. And so anyways, her boyfriend at the time's mother was also very spiritual. And so she booked her an appointment with a quantum biofeedback practitioner. And I'll go over what this is in more detail later, but I'll finish kind of like the journey of my story, I guess, to get to where I'm at. But she did the biofeedback on my sister, and it even picked up and flagged for her that she had this entity attachment to her alongside whatever else it picked up on from her. And then it also did a clearing energetically through this sophisticated technology. And then my sister said she felt, back to how she is normally, whereas before, when she had this experience with this entity, that whole month or few months, she was super depressed, wanting to cry all the time and didn't feel like herself. And that's what led her to being open to try this modality. So anyways, when she told me about this, it really piqued my curiosity because I was in this transition of not knowing what path was right for me. So I was exploring it, and it was a big investment. And I remember talking to this lady, her name's Jules Kennedy. I stumbled upon her book, which she channels the Pleiadians. And so I really love material with channelings of higher conscious beings. And so that's always been a lot of my material that I would personally want to explore, learn more about. Anyway, so I consulted with her because I was so drawn by her book that I wanted to reach out to her and kind of befriended her. Anyways, I did a reading with her where she channeled some information for me in which I was trying to find out if the quantum biofeedback was the right direction for me. And profoundly enough, what she told me then has come to pass, hindsight being 20/20, right? So what she told me was that the biofeedback or the quantum biofeedback would be a great tool for putting myself out there, because it would come with a set of credentials, which, my ego would, definitely stand behind. It really felt like it needed the credentials of it. And she said it would be a useful tool, but she's like, however, what people are actually going to come see you for is your healing. So at the time, like I said, I put Reiki on the shelf and didn't really think I was going to use it because I got it for a completely different reason. It wasn't, again, what I thought for myself was going to be the case. So when she told me that, I was like, oh, that's interesting, and amongst other things that she told me. But long story short, in that sense, I invested, I got certified, I did the quantum biofeedback, and it is a great tool. But what I find people really coming to see me for is healing work. And how that evolved is when I put myself out there for the quantum biofeedback, I added in all these little extra tools that I had mastered in myself, such as the astrology readings, the law of attraction coaching or some spiritual mentoring, although that kind of evolved in itself as well. And then the Reiki. So anyways, clients started coming to me and they started seeing me for the Reiki. And the more I did energy healing work, the more these channelings came in for me, where I was like downloading information about the client, although that took some time for me to understand and kind of step out of the way of, because my intellectual, ego mind wanted to be right and not wrong. And so I almost wanted the upfront proof that I was right before I trusted what these intuition knowings that were coming through for me were. And so that took a little bit of time for me to kind of learn to step out of the way of, because I started realizing that what was coming through, even though I didn't have upfront proof from that person to validate them in the moment, and so my ego could have gotten in the way of that transcription or that translation of that message to that person, if I would have chosen to withhold it because I didn't want to be wrong, or if I felt I was, I don't know, like I could have gotten in the way of it, really. And so I realized as some of these came in, and I'll give you an example, that a lot of these ended up being the clue to these people's healings. So that's why it was very important that I got out of the way out of these messages. And like I said, I'll give you an example, but as it evolved, I was playing messenger at first, kind of like maybe a medium channeler would, where they would say, I'm picking up on this information about you, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was playing messenger, but then my guides were like, okay, this is enough of this. We don't want you to play messenger anymore. They said, in fact, what we would rather you do is connect the person so they can have this experience for themselves, so that they can be the sole interpreter of what they're connecting to or what they're learning, versus you interpreting it for them. And so as that evolved, they kind of guided me, my higher guides, guided me into how to guide my clients so that they can access that for themselves, so that they can be the sole recipient of either the healing or the downloads or the knowings or the messages that they may be connecting to, such as connecting to their deceased loved ones, or their guides or their angels or guardians, or whatever it leads into in what they were experiencing in a journey. Now, at the time, I was still holding this evolved healing work under the domain of Reiki, which wasn't Reiki anymore. And so my guides were basically telling me I had to give it a new identity. But then my question was then, well, what is it that I'm doing? I have no idea. Like, what is this? And so that's when they were communicating to me that you're facilitating shamanic journey work. And so we created two different identities. One, which is the shamanic journey healing, which, it is where anything is possible to access when leading somebody into an astral state where their soul or their consciousness is traveling out of body, if you will, but the client is always channeling through their physical self as to what they are connecting to or seeing or feeling or experiencing, and where that journey takes them, right? Or where I am also serving as a guide or facilitator based on the intentions that they came into their session for. Whereas the shamanic shadows healing was a systematic, guided experience into addressing certain parts of the person as to their shadow aspects of self, and reclaiming a stronger relationship to themselves while exploring this still out of body, where you're kind of out of your own way. And so this systematic approach is addressing a very comprehensive experience in how to access healing from different angles in relationship to the self or your traumas or your childhood, or even connecting to your higher self and releasing things that aren't serving you and putting more back in that does. So I can go into more detail in that as well. But it's very powerful, is what I'm finding to be what my clients have all experienced and explored, which has also over the last few years been able to evolve, where it's not just for in-person clients, but I can facilitate remotely as well. So that's been really cool to evolve into being able to give people the opportunity to explore this without having to be in person. Let's see. So I practice in Evergreen, Colorado. So those are the things that I've facilitated, but I obviously add in different modalities, such as I already mentioned the quantum biofeedback. I have a Photon Sound Beam machine, which is based on Tesla's technology, but compiled with other revolutionary inventors into one unit. And that one has to be done in person, but there's a lot of healing benefits to that, and I can go again into details into each modality if you'd like. Then I have a PEMF mat, which is pulsed electromagnetic frequency mat, which kind of syncs your vibration to the harmonics of, so kind of like the Schumann resonance of the Earth's frequency, Hertz frequency. And it kind of, it's used to like recharge your cells as if each one of your cells are like a battery pack. And let's see, sound healing and crystal light therapy, or spectrochrome therapy, which is color light therapy. And crystal light therapy is basically color light therapy through quartz crystal Vogels. So yeah, anything's really possible when it comes to bridging, I think, the understanding of how to work with certain science technologies in regards to energy healing or healing in general. And in this case, my connection to spirit realm and non-physical or metaphysical, mystical, shamanic, that's kind of all the domains that I am the most infatuated with, I guess. And I don't know if your voice or your speaker's off on your end. Can you hear me? Yeah, it's showing me your video is off or your sound is off.
Yeah, sorry, I muted it so that, I won't. Okay, now I'm on again. So thank you for sharing your journey, how you began with everything and where you are now. I have a few questions, actually. I have like a million questions. So in terms of the astrology and the reading, the birth chart, actually somebody that did a birth chart for me, one of the interviewees. And so I was just wondering, is there much of a difference between the ones that you can just basically fill in your information and you download it online without talking to somebody, versus a person that does basically talk to you, and then they actually just fill out the forms or whatever requirement and then send it to you? And from person to person, whomever does the reading, would that make a difference with the results?
As far as your placements, as long as you have your accurate birth information and birth time, that should be consistent, depending on obviously what system the astrology uses, because there is different what I call systems that, or programs that would give you different degrees, if you will. Like it might change like how the houses are separated, and it's different form of, I guess, interpretation. But most astrologers, I feel like, would use mostly the same system. As far as computer programs, or there's obviously different sites that give different interpretations. And I feel like they are a great resource. And a lot of times there are a lot of free resources that people can access to analyze their own birth chart. But then as far as the interpretation of the astrologer, obviously they're delving in their education and their level of awareness and perception on how to translate someone's chart based on their education and what they look for might be able to give you more insight, not to mention predictive astrology, which therefore would be looking at what the planets are currently doing and how it is interacting with your personal chart, which most programs wouldn't be able to necessarily give you that perspective. But again, yes, the level of interpretation would be based on the understanding of the astrologer and how they perceive the many intricacies that can be found in someone's chart, which can, like I said, be like diving into the ocean and never reaching the bottom. And that's what I find, and even though I've studied it since I've been 12 years old, I feel like I'm still learning in that domain. So I feel like it's always evolving, and the planets are always changing their locations and how they're engaging with the other planets. And so energetically, that gives a catalytic effect collectively to everybody, but also you specifically individually, how that therefore is engaging with your specific blueprinted chart, favorably or unfavorably in different ways, is very contextual.
That makes sense.
And of course, also keeping into account the awareness of the person and their growth that they have done on their journey as to how they engage their personality profile. Because your growth can mature how you perceive through that lens as well. And so I feel like any astrologer would want to take that into account in how they translate that information to that person to empower them to understand themselves better and or how to work with the energies. So
I'm thinking about it. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, now let's move on to a Reiki question. I'm sorry about your grandma passed away before you were able to get to her and help her. So in terms of Reiki, I have actually a lot of people on the podcast, like almost 90% of the people that are brought on have some sort of Reiki experience and use that in their practice. And I actually got an aura reading course. And how much, I know there's a big difference. It just, you guys can, the Reiki, people that do this can, of course, feel and sense energy, right? But then in terms of aura reading, so how do you guys see the auras and everything too? And
I would say each practitioner is different as to what their senses are developed. I feel like with Reiki, it can be like a portal of, as you kind of funnel energy to the client. A lot of times their learning will describe it as being kind of like a straw, where you are the portal, that energy just flows through. But as far as what that practitioner might pick up on you might come in different ways, unique to that practitioner, as to what their most open portals are, whether it's visually seeing through clairvoyance, where maybe they could see energetically what your auric fields are showing you, or what they're picking up on visually in their mind's eye. They might have clairaudient capabilities, where they might hear maybe certain messages in their mind's eye, or through feeling it empathically. So when they're like laying their hands, they might feel what's going on in you because they'll feel it in them. In which case, I've tended to have more of that as well. And then claircognizance is where you're kind of like downloading information in the forms of knowings and thought forms. And that was what was mostly happening with me when I was working with clients. I was getting these downloaded messages, but it wasn't like a voice telling me, so it was hard for me to trust it as to, am I making this up, or is this coming from another place, right? So that for me evolved the more I learned to trust it. Yeah. So it just depends on what that person's most open portals are as far as extrasensory abilities. And I feel like the working with energy and being able to hone in what you're sensitive to on that subtle level would therefore be unique to that practitioner as to what those skill sets become for them, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Speaking of energy and working with other people, what are some of the ways that you recover from a session if it's like too intense, or you're sucking in like negative energy from other people, things like that?
I mean, there's different ways that I myself or other healers might clear themselves. I think for me, the big understanding is recognizing what's their energy and what's my energy, so that I learn to not take on something from them. In which case, since my services have evolved from Reiki, and I really do less Reiki than I do the shamanic work, because that's where I feel helps people actually address why they were blocked in the first place, versus Reiki, which might like balance and realign your chakras, but that I find to become very temporary for that person, because they are not addressing why they were imbalanced to begin with. And a lot of times that is habitual or repetitive, or the things that have been unaddressed in them. And so how with working with the shamanic work, I'm not taking on their stuff. I'm more helping them work on themselves by helping them access kind of like a portal or a bridge, if you will, to the other side themselves, where they're astral traveling, and therefore being able to engage or interact with what is meant for them, and or what we've set the intentions of in the beginning of their journey. And so again, I become more of a facilitator guide to link them and or help them connect further, depending on what they're connecting to. And and so I'm not taking on anything for them. So it's different versus I'm just facilitating.
Okay. Yeah. Now
So
I
I'm
get
not. Yeah. So they are essentially the ones doing the work on themselves. I'm just
it.
helping them access that where they're out of their own way to do so.
Okay. So you mentioned guides that
Higher
so
guide.
how do you channel those guides, and how do you find which guide is the right one for you or for your clients?
That's because they're experiencing connecting to the higher being themselves. And when we ask them if that being comes with an identity, and if so, what would they like them to call them? And so they engage with it themselves. So for me, I've learned about my different guides in different ways along my growth, from different ways, and how I might therefore be able to maybe connect with them for myself. But my guides were the ones that basically said it's more important than, instead of me playing messenger to that person and telling them what I'm connecting to or what I'm picking up on for them, it's more my job now to connect them like the bridge, so that they get that access for themselves, so that if that's what you wanted to connect to, was say your higher guides, setting that intention before your session is a good one to set, so that way what you then may connect to would be, you're kind of leaving that doorway open. Although I would say I tend to set that intention regardless for all sessions, and make time for, in at least the shamanic shadows healing, which again, we've kind of got an agenda we're going for. So there's a little bit of time in the beginning that we kind of see what what's kind of they're waiting for you, because we kind of connect you to your higher self first, so we can also open up your extrasensory faculties. And I do that with both the shamanic journey and the shamanic shadows healing, so that way you can utilize those faculties within your journey, and also hopefully strengthen them in your waking reality so that they can be stronger intuitive forces for you. But after that, then you can kind of see or feel, or depending on how you're connecting to your experience, which might be different for each person, to then see what higher conscious beings might be there. And a lot of times, if say that person, a lot of their trauma or their unresolved stuff might be connected to the loss of a loved one, which they may have not gotten closure from, that's who may show up first for that person and let them know that they are there, or give you the chance to feel their presence or engage with them, or give that opportunity for closure, not only on their end, but on your end. But otherwise, connecting to your guides or guardians or ascended masters is very possible. Things like interdimensionally traveling to other realms, other dimensions, other planets, going through portals. Everybody experiences different things on that level as possibilities. Accessing different timelines, because from that perspective, there is no such thing as time, and you get to experience that personally while you get to kind of navigate your journey and what you're learning or what you're experiencing, or who might be guiding you, depending on what we connect you to. Because sometimes those guides might want to take you on a journey. And so I might be less facilitating outside of connecting you to that, and just basically making sure that you're channeling, meaning you're speaking through your physical body. So I know where you are in your given journey because you're able to describe it to me. And then that way, if you're engaging with something that you don't realize has consciousness, I can probe you to connect with something that you might be connecting or seeing or feeling, so that you can get the most out of what you're connecting to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You answered my next question, and then that brought up another question.
Yeah.
Of preparing yourself to experience the out-of-body experience. What are some of the things that could affect it? Like, for example, I don't know, maybe diet, like maybe something that you would eat, facilitate or help you to reach there faster, versus something that might prevent you or limit you from getting there, slow you down, or like lifestyle habits or practices.
Well, I think since we're not isolated to just physical beings or just spiritual beings or just the mind, we're kind of a coagulation of all these areas. So all these areas I feel like are important to harness into a state of well-being, and for your own sake, right? But as far as what might limit you and your connection capabilities, if say I was to lead you into a shamanic journey, what I feel like is I can think of 3 things that I feel like would get in the way of someone connecting and getting the most out of their journey. One of them is your belief system, right? So because your belief system can get in the way of that. Say, for example, I'll give you an example of a client that we didn't even get to go that far, is because we realized that one of the limiting beliefs that she came in with was that if you meditate, you're going to be possessed by a demon. Okay, so this is something that is not true, but she believed to be true because what was told to her. And so she went into panic mode as soon as I started to kind of guide her, and she freaked out. And so, of course, we didn't even get started because her fear to even experience what is considered meditation prevented her from having that experience, because she wouldn't even be able to be led because she thought she was going to be possessed. So that would be a big blockage, is if you have any beliefs in the way of it, or say if you were conditioned with certain religious doctrines, that same thing might give you some limiting beliefs around having these connections to, say, spirit realm or your own guides or loved ones, and then of course, you don't have the open mind enough to have an alternative experience to determine what that would mean for you. If you have a predispositioned belief that says that that would prevent you from having that experience, right? Because you're kind of in the way of that experience. So that would be one thing. Two, what I've realized is if someone is in a lot of pain, that would prevent them, because they're focusing on their body and the pain that they're in, that they can't disconnect from the pain to allow themselves to kind of leave body, if you will, in an astral state. So sometimes that pain can be an anchor to your physical body. And so that might be something that I've noticed might prevent somebody from connecting. Let's see. I think there was a third one. Expectations and control. Those two, if you, and I facilitate in a way to guide you out of that, but some people have such a stranglehold over themselves with control that that sometimes, even if they're in the process of connecting, because if that in that space they don't feel like it's meeting their expectation of how they think it should be, they might think it's not happening, and so they can essentially pull themselves back to body because of that level of control and expectation, and how they kind of might be interweaved. Although the way I lead people is to kind of navigate some of those more controlled individuals or overthinking individuals, because we want to kind of disconnect mind first so that that can be less in the way of the authentic experience.
Then maybe some pre-sessions might need to happen before getting started so that the blockages get in the way.
Consulting. So with each of my clients, I'll normally set up in the same setting, and before leading into their journey, I will sit with them to not only see what their intentions are, or what they're trying to release, or what's holding them back, or what from their past is still surfacing in their current reality, or sabotaging them in certain ways, or what they have not resolved that they're already aware of, and kind of help probe deeper based on what, and also see what I might be picking up on and or mirroring back to them, so that they can apply the conscious aspect of awareness to themselves through what I like to mirror back to them, so they can see also what they are creating from their projections and how they communicate things, because that in itself would be a tool of what they would take forward with them in applying in their day-to-day, besides what they might learn in this altered experience. So, but both combined is very helpful, I feel like, for that person to process and take the most from moving forward.
Very interesting. All right. So what's your like daily routine, like starting in the morning, and how you prepare your day and your sessions and everything else that you have to do for your business?
I wish I could say it was there used to be a routine, and then as you can you hear me still?
Hold on. Stop.
Got a phone call. There you go. So I wish I could say there was a routine, but there used to be one before I had kids. So I am a mom, and I think, as you can imagine, like all forms of routine go out the window, and finding balance, I would say, is my personal struggle, is to maintain myself in alignment with taking care of my kids and or working with clients. So I wouldn't say it, for me, it's as much as a daily routine anymore, as much as giving myself those avenues, which for me, like working with clients, is for me like my sanity pill, to be honest, because work for me is where my passion is at. Because I believe in what I do, because I'm seeing what it's doing for people, and I'm also learning through that as well. So yeah, so things like that I've been exploring for myself is not only like working with clients, but then also hosting my own ceremony circles where I get to facilitate and educate people, which I feel good about, and working with energy in a group setting, which is powerful for everybody involved. And I get the most out of it too, because I get to connect, which is something that's very important for me. And I think for people as well, is to have that deeper connection and not playing on the surface. And in a group setting like that, in an intimate way, is really awesome for me. Other things that have really helped me and my growth as well is working with certain plant medicines like ayahuasca. I've even worked with mushrooms to kind of facilitate my healing work, but I would say ayahuasca has been a very transformative medicine for me on my own healing journey, and what I get to download or learn or release that only benefits me as a healer. And what I provide for others, but obviously I'm also here to do my own work. So that's been a good resource for me as well, or participating with like minds and like souls and in different social settings that are in alignment with what I find to be important, that provides deeper connection. So for me, I don't really enjoy going to like bars or drinking. That was part of a past, when I was in my early 20s and, later teenage years, right? When you're exploring that world. But I find that that just lowers my vibration, and it doesn't really serve me, and nor can my body process alcohol anymore like it used to. And so like one or two drinks and I feel like I want to go puke already, so and plus what's kind of been communicated too is that alcohol is actually a gateway for these for the lower vibratory entities to kind of like feed off of your chi energy. And so it's kind of like, since we work in a universe of free will, if you are participating in drinking or getting belligerent, it's almost like you giving permission to these beings, like as an open gateway to like feed off of your energy, because it's kind of like if you don't care enough about your own well-being or your vitality, then it's kind of like free for all, is kind of like how they perceive the permission status of what you permit. And so essentially you are feeding their energies. And so have you ever noticed, for one, alcohol known as spirits? That's one way to think of it. Two would be people almost can seem like they're possessed, or they become this other person because they're not just influenced by a narcotic, if you will, or a depressant drug of, alcohol or whatever, however you want to deem that. But it's also because you're being influenced by beings that feed off of the low boundaries that you have set up because you've lost those inhibitions. And so you can almost become this other person while under the influence. Does that make sense? So I say stay away from alcohol if you're trying to, better that. And obviously, yes, take care of your health, get plenty of rest, meditate, do all those things. It's only going to benefit you, and learn to master your mind, because you are creating consciously or unconsciously from what you're projecting. And it's easier said than done, of course, but that would be powerful for you to be able to purposefully shift your reality.
Wow, I'm loving this. I'm learning so much. I'm going to have to invite you back for another episode.
I love it.
Law of attraction. So how is that? What are some of the examples you have when working with clients, and from your own personal experience when it comes to law of attraction? Because you mentioned you thought of things and then you manifested them, and then they happen.
I mean, first and foremost is recognizing where you yourself are the creator. For me, that's like I said, since I was 19, so I'm 33 now. So I've been working with understanding this law since then, and learning to again master myself so that I can use that law. Law of attraction basically meaning like attracts like. What you think, you create. What you perceive, you receive, kind of thing. A lot of times we are, as humans, we focus on the problem state and not always on the desired state. And a lot of times what the things that we desire, we also have a connecting belief to that desire isn't possible for us based on the reality we are already perceiving. So meaning what you're already perceiving is your proof. So it's really hard for most people to challenge the proof of the reality that they've already experienced, because that reality that they've already experienced has been created from their beliefs already that are in place. And so a lot of times those beliefs, again, are creating for you. But if you are unaware of that, you believe that what you're seeing is reality. You're not giving yourself the power or empowerment to realize you created it all along, even the things that you don't desire.
That's true.
So if I could give an example, let's give relationships, for example. When I came into this realization regarding attracting partners, like I'd already played with it with money and be like, oh, today I'm gonna make this much, like as I was like playing with it like a game and not having an attachment to the result. But what I found I was struggling in at the same time was attracting a relationship that I could go deeper with, because all I was being put into the category of with guys was the dating and guys thinking they just wanted a sexual kind of hookup. And I was very like insulted that was what guys wanted from me at the time. And but I didn't realize I was creating that dynamic, right? I was unaware of this point. Even though I'd become aware of the law of attraction, I was still unaware as to why I kept getting this repeated cycle where I kept attracting good-looking guys, but they're always liars, assholes, cheaters. Mm-hmm. So I sat with myself one day, and because I was really fed up and I just wanted to swear off all guys and just be like, screw you all, I'm sick of it. And I made some rules for myself based on what I was seeing those patterns to be. But I also sat with myself and I asked myself, okay, well, what is your perfect type of guy? Mm-hmm. So my answer was like, oh, he'd be tall, dark, handsome, pretty eyes, nice smile, blah, 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 blah. And in which case was directly communicating what I was physically attracted to. I wasn't saying, oh, I don't want a short, fat, ugly guy. I was like, oh, I want tall, pretty, handsome, blah, blah, blah. Because I wasn't tricking myself into trying to divert the energy and focus on it in a indirect way of like expecting the universe to translate it to what it therefore would mean I wanted. I was directly communicating I wanted this was what I was attracted to. However, when I sat with myself and I was like, okay, well, what about personality, and all that? And I was like, well, I don't want a liar. I don't want a cheater. I don't want an asshole. I don't want all these things, because I'd been hurt by all those things that I perceived in men, right? Was liar, asshole, cheater. But that's where my energy was going. So that's what I was energizing. Even though I was saying no in front of it, I was still energizing liar, asshole, cheater. So without a doubt, without fail, every single time I kept attracting a good-looking liar, asshole, cheater. So I had to challenge myself in that narrative to then attract who's now my husband, actually. And I attracted him when I was 21. I made a vision board, and I put on there a picture of what I thought he should look like, a little picture of Josh Hartnett, because at the time I knew he was a Cancer, and so am I, as far as astrological signs. And at the time I was like, oh, maybe if I date my own sign, maybe then we'd get along, and that was kind of limited thinking in its own right. But at the time, that's what I thought maybe my answer was. And then I put all these quotes as to what I thought he should be like, how we connect, quotes like, he doesn't judge me, therefore I know he loves me. This time it's personal, close relationships. He lost his black book, she lost her therapist, together they found each other, things like those nature. And at the time, what I created this from was also a limited perspective of my dating life, which I'd never had a real relationship before. I wasn't creating from the space of reference of knowing the ins and outs of relationships. So I was still kind of limited on what I thought I wanted, because I created this vision board when I was 21. Within 2 weeks, I met my now husband, and anyways, long story short, I looked on the vision board after a few weeks of dating. He was identical to the picture on there, was a Cancer just like Josh Hartnett, and had all these characteristics. Some of them that I didn't think out, or think out clearly. For example, I put on there someone who breaks all the rules. That one I had to learn the hard way as to what that meant, because I had to pay the price for that. And then there was a few things missing on there, because what I put into that vision board was what I thought I wanted at 21, which is somebody who's lacking experience in any sort of connecting on a relationship front, let alone not keeping into context who I was going to be growing into becoming, and where that would evolve to be, and what that would need, I would want from a partner, right? So I got exactly what I asked for from what I put on this vision board at 21. But again, that's been an evolution process, because I created the foundation of this person in my partner, who, like I said, is now my husband. But he is also very different from me, because he's not really spiritually interested, right? So, but I never put that on my vision board that I was seeking that, nor was I necessarily evolved in my own spiritual growth, where I am now as to where I was then, and who I'm still growing into becoming. Like, I'm still evolving. So that's just an example as to, you're always creating, and you might change your mind of what you think you want based on the experience of what you get. And the more you become aware of what you're creating, the more you can create from there.
Mm-hmm. That is such a sweet story.
Yeah, I've got millions of examples, but I feel like, and of course, when it comes to relationships, it's also more complicated, because you're working with their free will and their emotional makeup and your emotional makeup. So when it comes to manifesting law of attraction, it does get a little bit more difficult, more complicated when you're involving another person and their free will. So I'll give you a heads up on that.
Yeah, that does make sense. Right. So for the remote healing, because you mentioned this is interesting. I've been seeing it a lot on Facebook. For whatever reason, this ad keeps on popping up about this remote healing course. And it's like, 75, 80% off. It's like $5, $15. And I just like pass by it, because I don't know what it's really about and how I can use it in my practice. I never look into it. And another reason is I have way too many courses that I purchased. I don't even have time to go through everything. So I didn't bother with it. But can you go into a little more detail about remote healing?
Yeah. Remote meaning you can do it from afar, which in terms of energy, it's already been proven by quantum science and physics that everything is energy and can connect from far away. And in fact, like even down to our atom, we are 99.99% space. And so our atoms are connected by mostly empty space, right? So energetically, your thoughts and intentions have an influence on what can therefore be manifest or created, but also where you direct your thoughts and energy and intentions to, and whom so if you are working with healing, you can directly connect energetically to that individual remotely as well. And again, there's other remote healers, like Reiki. There's a lot of remote Reiki healers, where that person and the receiver can benefit energetically still from afar as in person. And anyways, like I said, with the shamanic work, I can do that remotely, because I still can facilitate through guiding you while energetically connecting to you, and still having you channel, so I know where you are in any given part of the journey. So I can still do that remotely, as I've learned, which I didn't start out thinking that was possible, or I wasn't sure if that was possible, and until I kind of opened up a trial to try it out, and worked on at first some friends, like a girlfriend of mine who lived in New York, and she connected exactly how my in-person clients would connect. And that's when I started opening up to taking in more people and being able to therefore have the validated proof that these people are experiencing what I am witnessing my clients experiencing in person. So that's where I feel I'm confident that I can facilitate that to clients from afar as well, as long as we have mutual availability, in which in my case I am also limited by my mom life as to how available I can be. So otherwise I would be probably doing this a large portion of my life just because I love it so much.
Yeah, now it makes more sense. All right. So like, I'm thinking let's conclude this interview with the shamanic. I can't even say it right. Shamanic, right? Shamanic.
For the shamanic. So for the shamanic journey healing. So what do you want to know about that?
Yeah, the two types. Maybe going to a little bit more detail on that, and anything else that you'd like to share with us.
Okay. So like I mentioned, both processes is me facilitating, and again, it depends on if you're in person versus remotely. Obviously, you wouldn't get the benefits of some of the in-person services that would complement the experience. But some of the things that is involved in as far as the sensory experience would be working with spectrochrome therapy, which is color light therapy, tuning forks, which tuning forks can be sound frequency based or vibratory frequency based. I mean, they're all energy and it's all frequency, but what I mean is the vibratory tuning forks are weighted so you don't hear sound, but you put them on different, in my case, I use them for the chakras, for the tuning forks anyhow, and they instill the vibration into the chakra of where they're supposed to be resonating at, and then the same thing with the sound is on the subtle field. So in that case, remotely, you wouldn't get the vibratory effect as far as feeling the tuning forks on those placements. And then things like essential oils and other things that I might complement the experience on a sensory level. However, energetically, each person gets, because I'm connecting to you energetically remotely, as we kind of discussed, and I guide you into that altered state through a powerful guided meditation that I was led to guide, so people can connect to the visualizations into meeting them into that out-of-body experience. After that, like for both, same thing, it's the same kind of lead up as to kind of help you clear your mind so you can get out of your own way so that you don't have an overactive thinking processes going on while I'm leading you up. And so that way you're more engaged on a sensory level and can suspend your judgments or your control or your expectations, which for the most part is very successful for a majority of my clients. And there's just like a handful that their control pulled them back down. But again, I try to facilitate leading up in that manner. Then I connect you to your higher self so that you can open up your extrasensory faculties and your intuitive faculties so that you can better engage with in your journey. And then after that, I kind of let you see what you're connecting to or what you're seeing and how you're seeing it, in which case people might see orbs of light. They might describe it as orbs of light, which might be representative of their guides, angels, guardians, loved ones, ascended masters, whatever. It could be energy mists of color. It could be light beings that take on humanoid forms or angelic forms, or it could come in symbolic forms. So if you think in the terms of like your dreams, a lot of times your dreams are symbolic. And so a lot of it, if you know to engage with it, you might impart wisdom from what you're connecting to. For example, somebody might describe they're in a field with this large tree and where they feel drawn to this tree. And so as I lead them into connecting with that tree, they realize this tree has messages for them. And it comes from a higher, like some wise information that it might impart to them. So in fact, it could still be in the form of, say, guidance or answering questions from a higher perspective. And then, so the shamanic shadows healing, so that's consistent for both, is giving you the time to do both. But then the shamanic shadows healing is really about then working with different aspects of yourself. And then I do that in tandem with your chakras. So the throat chakra dealing a lot with how you relate to yourself. And a lot of times you're kind of guided to see yourself, looking into your reflection, if you will, and asking that perspective of you, or the soul that which is you, how they're feeling and what they're holding on to, and what you may not be listening to, right? Working with the self, so that you can re-embody connecting to what it is that you need and understanding from yourself what it is that you need more of what is holding you back. Heart chakra is a lot about taking down the walls that have preventing you from connection, and to I better get